everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I want to go ahead and talk about a very interesting topic that just kind of fell out of nowhere. Kind of a little bit of a cross-section between the college game and the pro game. But boy, oh boy, is it a spicy meatball. All right, so here's the deal, right? Obviously, right now, college football's done. You probably heard Michigan won the national championship on Monday. Congrats to Michigan. Congrats to Jim Harbaugh. Congrats to all the players, fans, alums, etc. Why I bring it up is because obviously from the college football perspective, it feels like the next big topic, conversation, thing we'll be monitoring is, what does Jim Harbaugh do next? Does he return to Michigan, or does he pursue an NFL opportunity? He has been linked to essentially every job that's open, ranging from the Chargers to the Raiders to the Commanders, maybe even I saw some New England stuff if that job opens up. So he is a hot commodity, and it'll be curious to see what his next move is. But I bring up Jim Harbaugh to simply say that we are not only now done with college football, we are done with the NFL regular season. And because of it, it is the time of year where coaches are coming and going. Coaches are getting hired. Coaches are getting fired. Obviously, we're going to see what's next for Jim Harbaugh. But the topic became interesting to the college football crowd on Tuesday because we got a stunner of all stunners out of Tennessee, where just, what was it, 2 years ago? Tennessee had the #1 seed in the AFC. Well, Mike Vrabel is out as the Tennessee Titans head coach. And what's crazy about it, by the way, keep in mind, he is a guy that is very well respected, very well regarded. There's a lot of people that think that Tennessee could have gotten compensation for him if they decided to see if there was interest in him from other NFL teams. Instead, they just said, you know what? We're done. You're out. Pack your bags, pack your office. See you later. So now the question becomes, and a lot of you are probably wondering, Torres, why are you talking about Mike Vrabel here on a mostly college sports channel? Well, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. It is because Mike Vrabel has a very serious ties to one of the most prominent programs in college football. You may have heard Mike Vrabel played at Ohio State. Mike Vrabel was an assistant coach at Ohio State under Urban Meyer, and Mike Vrabel was long deemed to be the eventual successor, maybe down the road, if Ryan Day didn't get things figured out. Obviously, Ryan Day is going through some stuff. He's lost 3 straight to Michigan, embarrassing bowl loss to Missouri. And I bring it up because the conversation has kind of been like, if this thing keeps going the way it does, and if Mike Vrabel someday decides he wants to get out of the NFL, that kind of feels like the guy that should be replacing Ryan Day down the road. So now that Mike Vrabel, as of about noon Eastern on Tuesday, January 9th, is available, the conversation has become, is there any way in which the next time the Ohio State Buckeyes run out of the tunnel, Mike Vrabel is their next head coach? What I would say is, if I'm being totally 1,000% transparent, the answer is basically no. But I do think there's one tiny little scenario in which Mike Vrabel could be your next Ohio State head coach sooner rather than later, and I do want to dive in. Let's be clear. That scenario, it is not Ryan Day getting fired. And listen, anyone who listens to this channel knows I've been critical of Ryan Day, listens to the podcast knows I've been critical of Ryan Day. I think I've been right. I think I've been justified. Program has been, listen, there's a baseline of what Ohio State is and is not. They're never going to be terrible. They're never going to be Purdue. But the things that make Ohio State, competing for Big Ten championships, smacking around Michigan, that has not been there the last couple of years, okay? But at the same time, as critical as I have been of Ryan Day, let me be the first to say, Scout's honor. Anyone who thinks this man should be let go of his current duties is out of their freaking mind. The bottom line is, as critical as I've been of Ryan Day, couple facts. One, basically beating everybody but Michigan, right? Destroys, for the most part, Penn State on an annual basis. Destroys everybody not named Michigan. And let's be honest, even just go back to last year. As bad as it feels right now, with Michigan coming off a national championship, with 3 straight losses to the school up north, let's also call a spade a spade. Ohio State fans will tell you, and Ryan Day defenders will tell you, they were a missed field goal away from probably winning the national championship last year. Remember, they made the playoff. They lose to Georgia on a walk-off field goal miss as time expired, basically as 2022 expired. It was basically exactly midnight Eastern when that field goal did not go through. And so I bring it up because Ohio State fans will rightfully tell you, as bad as it is right now, we were a missed field goal away from winning a national championship because we were losing us to TCU at SoFi Stadium. And Ohio State fans, I will defend you. I actually agree with you 100%. You were this close to winning a national title. So Ryan Day isn't on the hot seat, shouldn't be on the hot seat. And to be blunt, I'll give Ryan Day credit. I think he kind of understands what is at stake this offseason, and he's pushing all his chips in the middle. I can agree or disagree with if Will Howard is the answer at quarterback, but also I will say he felt like his quarterback room wasn't good enough, wasn't deep enough. He didn't know if Devin Brown could stay healthy, and he went out and got an answer at that quarterback position. Beyond that, the big news that broke as Michigan was, celebrating a national championship, Quinshon Judkins, 2,600 yards rushing over the last 2 years at Ole Miss, committed to Ohio State. And so I bring it up because I give Ryan Day credit between the recruiting classes that he's put together, between the portal classes that he's put together. This will be probably the most talented offense in college football next year. Quinshon Judkins, Emeka Egbuka sounds like he's going to be back. Travion Henderson sounds like he's going to be back. Carnell Tate, former 5-star wide receiver. Brandon Inniss, former 5-star wide receiver. Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 recruit in the country this year. So Ryan Day isn't on the hot seat, and he's going to have a darn good team going into next year. The other factor is like, does Mike Vrabel really want this job? And beyond that, is he going to take it if there's other NFL opportunities out there? And the funny thing is, like I've seen a little commentary on this topic, and the number one conversation seems to be, why would Mike Vrabel, a guy who made a ton of money playing, a guy who's made a ton of money coaching, why would he want to come back to college in the transfer portal NIL era? And I'll be honest, I think that's a very fair and legitimate conversation to have. I also think it's ultimately the wrong one to have, because if Mike Vrabel didn't have any other options, and if Ohio State really was an option, I think you would take it, right? Guys say they don't want to coach in college until they have nowhere else to go. Chip Kelly didn't want to coach in college until nobody was hiring him in the NFL. For people who follow both basketball and football, Fred Hoiberg is a great example. Didn't want to coach college. Then he got fired twice as an NBA head coach. He's like, well, I want to keep coaching. I guess I'm going back to college. And so I only bring it up to say the question with Mike Vrabel isn't whether he wants to coach in the NIL portal world, but is he going to have another opportunity in the NFL? And I'll be honest, I think I would say almost certainly he is going to get one. I think he's a heck of a candidate for any job that could open. Listen, this was a guy, 6 years as an NFL head coach, 4 winning seasons, number 1 seed in the playoffs, ended Tom Brady's career with the New England Patriots. That was a different year. But the bottom line is this guy won huge, and it's worth noting he won huge with Ryan freaking Tannehill as his quarterback. And so if you're the Chargers and you are serious about competing and you don't think Jim Harbaugh's the guy, I would love to see what Mike Vrabel could do with a real quarterback in Justin Herbert. Vegas Raiders, if you don't think Antonio Pierce is the guy, and wink, wink, Vegas, I think that he is. Now, if you can get Harbaugh, you probably can't turn that down. But I think Antonio Pierce is a really good coach. Mike Vrabel makes sense there too, if you don't think Antonio Pierce is the guy. And that cracks me up. It's like, imagine, Mike Vrabel with the opportunity to draft his own quarterback, build from the ground up. That makes sense. How about him in Washington if they don't think, Belichick or Harbaugh is the guy? Number 2 pick, you probably take Drake May. That could be an answer. New England, if you replace Belichick, number 3 pick. And so you could go on and on, but Vrabel is going to have options in the NFL. And if he doesn't, the NFL is quirky and crazy because this guy needs another opportunity. I would hire him in a heartbeat. So again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a great conversation on social media, on Twitter, on this, on that. I just don't think it's going to happen. I did say, though, at the beginning of this segment, and I got to pay it off, got to do it. Got to do it. I said at the beginning of the segment, I said I did think there was one scenario in which it could happen. That scenario to me is pretty straightforward. It's if Ryan Day actually pursues his own NFL opportunity. Now, I don't think that is going to happen. It's funny because after he lost to Michigan, I thought for sure, like, this guy's going to try to bail. But you look at Ryan Day's actions since losing to Michigan and since losing to Missouri in the bowl game, as I said, he is not recruiting like a man that has one foot out the door to go to the NFL. Bring in Will Howard. Bring in Quinshon Judkins. You add a couple other guys. You add the offensive lineman from Alabama to beef up the O-line. So I give Ryan Day credit. He's doing everything right, everything that any Ohio State fan could ask of him. And the last thought that I really have on this, let me just say this quick. I understand the frustration from Ohio State fans, but you are one thing away from retaking the Big Ten. I mean, think about it. What if Jim Harbaugh does decide to go to the NFL? And by the way, all accounts are that he's going to. I'm not going to claim that I know Jim Harbaugh, but if you're Jim Harbaugh, you leave to the NFL, all of a sudden, Ryan Day is walking into 2024 probably with the best roster in this conference. Now, you could argue maybe Oregon. You can argue that the foundation that Jim Harbaugh built will still be there at Michigan, assuming they don't go outside the family and completely blow the thing up. But if Jim Harbaugh leaves, the league is yours for the taking. So Ohio State fans, I know some of you want this to happen. It's not going to unless Ryan Day decides to leave. But I do think the talent is there to compete right away in the Big Ten, especially, by the way, if Harbaugh leaves. Listen, I've been as anti-Ryan Day as anybody, but I could see this flipping overnight. I could see them again being the favorite in the Big Ten next year.